Is there a place in time where logic breaks down and wonderment begins? Could that be somewhere or sometime along an indefinable line between the reasonable and highly unlikely? Makeshift Stories presents a monthly journey into the improbable.
Today's story, episode 209, Mr. Tesla's Visitor. Read and recorded by Mitchell 2. Audio editing and post-production by Matthew Erdman. Somewhere and sometime, an obscure idea might change the world in unexpected ways. The New Yorker hotel was exactly like Allison Grove had imagined. At 43 stories, with its tan brick facade sporting Art Deco inlays, it reminded her of a squat Empire State Building, minus the airship mooring mast. In 1932, it was only 2.5 years old, she reminded herself, and fashionable amongst the celebrities and gangsters of the day. In an odd way, the choice of the New Yorker spoke volumes about her target. Allison didn't waste time examining the lavishly outfitted lobby. She wasn't there to do historical research. Instead, she headed straight for the elevators, trying to look as if she walked through the cavernous space every day. The operator let her off on the 33rd floor, bringing the lift to a jerky halt, then adjusting it to line up with the floor. "You'll be looking for room 3328, ma'am. It's his study." The stocky, middle-aged man volunteered, casting her a critical eye before reaching for the door release. "How do you—" "Lady, everyone who's not a hotel guest and wants this floor is here to see the old man. He's supposed to be some kind of inventor or something. You can tell when he's got a new idea by the number of well-dressed folks he receives. I've overheard him asking for money. You an investor? You don't look the type." "I don't?" "Nah, you ain't wearing enough diamonds. All the lady investors have diamonds dripping off them. So, why you want to see the old guy anyway, then?" The man waited for a response, looking Allison up and down again. When she didn't provide an answer, he shrugged and pulled the doors open with a huff. "All right then, lady, have it your way. I was just trying to make conversation." Allison squeezed by the man, catching a whiff of cheap aftershave and cigarettes as she stepped out into the carpeted hall. Behind her, the elevator door clanged shut, and the car started to rattle back down. She felt relief rush up her back, and reminded herself of where and when she was. Automated elevators were still decades in the future, and the person she had come to see had been born by candlelight. A lot had changed since then, but change would only accelerate from this point, she mused. The door to 3328 was open when she arrived. Nikola Tesla sat cross-legged in a straight-backed chair on the far side of the room, waiting. From archive photos, she knew he would be thin, but the man in the hand-tailored suit, which had seen better days, was almost skeletal, with deep-set eyes and lips pursed pensively, as if she had kept him waiting too long. His long, bony fingers were clasped tightly together on his lap. "Thank you for letting me interview you, Mr. Tesla," Allison blurted out nervously. Was she late? She instinctively checked her wristwatch. The hands were in the correct location, but it didn't mean the archaic device was right. Each clock was self-contained. Possibly Tesla's was set ahead or behind hers. She raced through her mind for an appropriate way to respond. Allison couldn't afford to make a mistake so early in the encounter. "Hello, Miss Grove," Nikola greeted, without emotion, after an awkward silence. "Please, come in and sit down. I've been waiting for you." The old man motioned her to another, straight-back chair, which would have been at home in a formal dining room. The walls were covered with drawings and photos of odd apparatus and obscure equations. In one corner stood a machine which looked like it belonged in a cheap, mid-20th century science fiction film. "Thank you." Allison smiled, then sat, still unsure if she had somehow started off on a bad foot, and began to pull a notepad from her bag. The old inventor seemed amused by her struggle to get set up. I have an eidetic memory which renders the taking of notes unnecessary. He smirked conceitedly. Without such a rare ability as mine, other scientists and inventors are forced to employ the needlessly slow and cumbersome development of prototypes, the use of many experiments, and the documentation of both on paper. I do all that work in my mind, and only fix the final product in ink once I know it to be true and fully functional. At 76, my mind is as active as ever. I have, through strict and pointed discipline, kept my body and mind healthy. People often marvel at the fit of my clothes. My tailor has used the same measurement for 35 years. We eat too much, Miss Grove, and add to that overindulge by consuming the wrong things and exercising too little. I, for example, walk 8 to 10 miles a day and avoid cabs. The body and mind do not need to slow in the sunset years. I am the perfect example of such. Early in life, I had the wherewithal to plan a routine and the self-control to follow it. It is the plan for a sane and purposeful life. My work is my purpose, which I will continue until I die. You will not see me idle in a park with a blanket over my knee, waiting for a nurse to wheel me home. Other people want vacations. To them I say find work more suited to your temperament, so you do not wish to escape from it. If all people found meaning in their work, happiness would be everywhere. Allison made a show of scrawling something illegible on her notepad. I know the readers of the Daily Observer will appreciate the background on you and your working methods, Mr. Tesla. I am sure they would also like to hear about the startling new scientific discoveries you have been working on. Tesla uncrossed and recrossed his legs, shifting his weight, what little of it there was, from one side to the other. Yes, of course. My new inventions are built on my solid foundation of scientific research done over many decades, much of which is noted in detail in my autobiography. Have you read it? Allison was thankful she had dedicated some of the limited time she had for preparation to the book. I have. Good. Then you will recognize how these new discoveries extend several of my early, groundbreaking ideas, which have, by their very nature, already added positively to the modern human condition. Allison found herself conflicted. On one hand, she almost felt sorry for this frail, old man who had become so convinced of his genius that he was oblivious to his failures. While Edison lived in a mansion, he was penniless, his rooms paid for by Westinghouse. On the other hand, his arrogant belief that his work could only improve humanity had cost her world dearly, and for that she wanted to hate him. Early on you explored X-rays and radio. I understand even one of Marconi's patents was withdrawn because of your early work in the field, she said, trying to appeal to his ego and hide her sudden sense of disgust. Tesla nodded, seemingly satisfied. Yes, that was indeed the case. But now let us talk of my new work. He paused to consider his words. Of greatest importance is my discovery of a manner in which to harness a new source of energy, unknown until I came across it. I will do this through the development of ingenious and unique machines of my own design. I developed the principle over many years. It will be a source of power accessible everywhere, and, after an initial substantial cost, it will take little to maintain. There is public excitement about atomic power. However, there is little to be gotten from the smashing of atoms. I have said this many times to other scientists and to the public, but to little effect. In the past, many of my electric apparatus, which harnessed millions of volts in a matter of seconds, tore atoms apart and generated all manner of rays. One of which I tried to sell to the military to strike down enemy planes at a great distance. Yet, I saw little power generated in their splitting. There is not much more I am willing to say at this time. However, there is also my other discovery. And what is that? Allison encouraged, hoping to move him on to the reason she had come. People of little imagination initially ridiculed the idea of airplanes and radio waves, he scoffed. New ideas challenge the dullness of mind and are generally rejected. This has been a constant in my work. But time is a harsh judge of the closed-minded, Miss Grove. My second new idea, the photographing of thoughts, will bring about a massive social revolution. Allison found herself squirming in her seat. When I was younger, he continued, seemingly oblivious to her discomfort, I used to suffer flashes of light so bright in my mind I could not see an object set in front of me. I would be forced to stop work until the light faded. But in their twilight, images not seen from the outside world would solidly form. So convincing were these optical manifestations of mental process, I felt I could reach out and touch them. At the time, I thought the images were being physically inscribed on my retinas, and I knew it would be possible to photograph them. This is how the idea for my mind camera started. And now that I am older, I rarely have these bright lights intrude on my vision, but I never forgot the experience. In recent years, I have put much thought into the nature of the retinal mind images, and I came to understand they were not direct physical stimulation of the retina through the optical nerve, but rather powerful energies emitted from my brain. So strong are these energies that they interfere with normal sight and cause the retina to respond to them. I have discovered that the brain is a radio transmitter, each thought emitting a unique energy wave. My new idea for the mind camera receives these brain signals through many fine antennas placed around the skull and traces pictures from them by means of a cathode ray. Initially, I had imagined a much more sophisticated apparatus, an artificial retina that would receive the images of thoughts transmitted through nothing more than the earth, which is another invention of mine. I can transmit thousands of signals through the ground as if it had individual wires. The original artificial retina would have been constructed in the fashion of a checkerboard, with many separate squares so small as an individual one is not seen. These would respond to the pulses pushed against the retina by thoughts. But alas, my somewhat limited current situation forced me to alter my plans. It is thus, by poverty of means, a crude system. However, my prototype is recently complete. Now, objects imagined in the mind can be captured and displayed as they are formed. If I had the resources to implement my ground transmission system, they could have been sent any place and everywhere in the world at once. Alas, they are confined to the copper wires which run from the antennas to an ungainly cathode ray tube. Tesla had finally come to the heart of the matter, and Allison needed to play her cards very carefully. What was the best way forward, she wondered? Appeal to his belief that he was improving the world for all? Somehow convince him this latest variation of the original idea was flawed? Somehow leverage his obsessive belief in the truth of his ideas? She let the self-absorbed inventor prattle on as she struggled to decide. Imagine, once mind photography becomes as common as the daily newspaper, every thought will be read, and then we will all become like open books. There will be no place for malice or deceit to hide. It will be a vast social revolution, like nothing the world has seen before. You have this working already? Allison asked, realizing this might be the opportunity she had been looking for. As I said, my limited means required me to adapt existing devices of questionable design and quality, such as the cathode ray tube, instead of my artificial retina, and the use of copper wires as opposed to wireless transmission. Tesla scowled, then suddenly sprung up from his chair and walked over to the machine Allison had noticed earlier in a corner of the room. I can assure you it works, although it is a mere shadow of my original design. Would you like to try, Miss Grove? I see you are hesitant. I can assure you that I have used it many times myself, and as you can see, I am still vital and healthy. I'd like to try it, Allison consented. Good then. Please, bring your chair and place it under the stand. Eyeing Tesla's thrown-together apparatus more critically, her first instinct was to run. After all, this was a man she had come to revile, and he was asking her to put her head into a high-voltage cage. It was counterintuitive, but she knew she had to do it. I will go first if you want, but that will prove nothing. You will claim I have captured the images previously by other means, and that I am simply projecting them from a hidden lens. Allison dragged the chair to the place where Tesla had pointed, reluctantly sat, and clasped the arms of the chair so hard her knuckles began to turn white. I'm ready. Let's get this over with. Tesla positioned the wire cage on her head, made a few adjustments, then flicked a large switch on a makeshift control panel. The hum of high voltage filled the room, followed by crackles of arcing electricity. Then the CTR screen began to glow. Allison closed her eyes and concentrated. With growing interest, Tesla watched ghostly images emerge and fade away on the gray surface of the screen, like cumulus clouds on a summer day. Then suddenly, he switched his apparatus off. You have traveled in time, Miss Grove. It was a statement of fact, not a question. How far in the future are you from? He demanded. Allison didn't hesitate. 100 years, Mr. Tesla. It was very crafty of you, Miss Grove, to have me discover your secret through my camera. Would you have believed me if I had simply told you? Tesla thought for a moment. I cannot say, but the question is rendered irrelevant, is it not, Miss Grove? My mind camera has revealed your very thoughts, as you formed them. Being an inventor and scientist, I am of course both interested in the manner which brought you here and the meaning of many of the images projected. I would like to feign being flattered that a time traveler would come to meet me. However, I suspect the fact one has bespeaks of my success and future importance. As to the nature of the process which brought me here, I'm sworn to silence, Allison stated, in a tone which left no room for argument. I'm sure you can understand the reason why, Mr. Tesla. It is a risk just to reveal its existence, one I am forced to take to convince you. You need to see more of my thoughts to understand. Please, turn the machine back on. Tesla nodded, and the hum of power once again filled the small room. Allison closed her eyes and concentrated one more time. The inventor watched the screen, curiosity slowly changing to apprehension. Finally, he shut the apparatus off, then stared into space, anguish and disbelief written across his face. I understand some of the images, enough to know they paint a darker picture than I would like, but my prototype's poor resolution limits full comprehension. So, I am embarrassed to ask for an explanation in your words, Miss Grove. Allison took the cage off her head, then placed it on her lap, and drew in a deep breath. Your new design for the camera works better than you think, Mr. Tesla. Her voice wavered nervously. So much depended on this one moment and the request she was about to make. But you were never able to convince anyone in your time to invest in it. For a while, your ideas, inventions, and patents languish in relative obscurity, until near the end of this century, when people begin to rediscover you. Tesla shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I know I have detractors, and many of my ideas are rejected by my contemporaries, who stubbornly stick to mechanical and mercantile views of the world. Does science in your day study the non-physical, Miss Grove? Not exactly, she began, choosing her words carefully. Your original idea for the mind camera was wrong. The brain doesn't form images on the retina, but when you were forced to read the brain's electric fields instead, that worked. It became your most important innovation, although few people will know. However, your prototype and patent for the design disappear after your death. The thing is a compromise, a corrupt version of my idea, Tesla growled. It shows only vague images. It is trivial compared to the new source of power I am working on. May I ask, what became of that? Allison was so mad at the arrogant man's dismissal of the camera. She was tempted to tell him the truth, that his ideas for limitless power were still considered pseudo-scientific claptrap. Instead, she deflected the question. We need to talk about your camera first. It fundamentally changes the world, Mr. Tesla, more than any new power source could. Your patent for the mind camera expires and is then discovered and repatented by a man in the early 21st century who starts a technology company called Quantic. You can think of him as a kind of Edison or Westinghouse. Quantic rapidly becomes a global corporation which manufactures many of the things you have envisioned. Its products include small speakers which fit into people's ears and communicate wirelessly with other devices so the wearer can hear music or speak on the phone. The thing about those ear speakers that only very few people know is they contain a miniaturized version of your device. They capture the wearer's ideas, and worse, the thoughts of anyone within 200 feet, so a person doesn't even need to wear them to have their most intimate musings harvested. Mr. Tesla, because of your mind camera, there are no private thoughts anymore. It's impossible to know when one of Quantic's devices is around. The company has been secretly eavesdropping on people's mental processes for the last 20 years. Knowing the intimate desires and secrets of humanity has given Quantic an insurmountable competitive advantage, making it more powerful than many countries. Quantic steals new ideas the instant they're conceived and exploits them before anyone realizes their potential. This feeds a continual stream of new products and services which dominate their market segments. No one could figure out how the company was doing it. Elections and new government policies always seem to favor Quantic's interests. Even when challenged by antitrust suits, decisions have always gone their way. Critics and opponents change their opinions or end up being publicly humiliated by some indiscretion. A small group of us finally decided to isolate ourselves to discover their secret. We suspected some type of surveillance, so we rejected all Quantic products, which meant scouring garbage dumps for old equipment. We eventually found the new patent filing and traced it back to you and this machine. No one beyond our small circle knows about this. Telling other people risks being exposed and eliminated one way or another. We are up against impossible odds, Mr. Tesla. I'm here to plead with you to destroy this prototype and all your notes for it, except the ones describing the original artificial retina. You claim your intent is to better the human condition. Allison heard the elevator ding, making her heart skip a beat. Are you expecting anyone else today, Mr. Tesla? No, just you. Allison looked desperately around the room, then spotted a heavy-looking length of pipe. She jumped up, knocking her chair over, and dashed to where the pipe was leaning against the wall. Wielding the improvised club in both hands, she attacked the mind camera. "Stop! Please stop! What are you doing?" Tesla cried. "I've put all my money into that!" He moved quickly for a man of his age, but not fast enough. "They found me," Allison huffed between blows, standing in a newly created pile of glass shards, ripped cables, and crushed components. "Someone! They must have!" Before she could complete the thought, she heard the elevator door opening. "Look, there's not much time, Mr. Tesla. You need to destroy any notes or working drawings of this version of your mind camera, the artificial retina. That's where your invention needs to end." A large man dressed in a police uniform appeared in the door.
"Are you okay, Mr. Tesla? The elevator operator was concerned. He said there was something wrong about your visitor."
The policeman looked accusingly from the disemboweled apparatus to Allison, still holding the pipe in one hand.
"I'll take care of her, Mr. Tesla. Sorry about your machine. I hope you can fix it. Who knows? One day it might prove to be more important than AC power."
The policeman smiled in a knowing way. "Mr. Tesla, please!" Allison pleaded as she was dragged from the room.
Makeshift Stories is a proud member of the Alberta Podcast Network, locally grown, community supported. to listen to other great APN podcasts, such as Repodcasting, where Janet and Lucia recast favorite and not-so-favorite movies, head over to albertapodcastnetwork.com.
With Pod Power, our sponsors are making it possible for us to amplify the voices of Albertans and Alberta podcasters. This episode, Edmonton Community Foundation is helping us give a Pod Power shout-out to Bookwomen. Bookwomen is a podcast about editing, publishing, and writing Indigenous stories. 3 Métis librarians representing nations from across the homeland aim to inspire Indigenous peoples to share their stories in whatever form they enjoy. Guests include Indigenous storytellers from diverse mediums like podcasting, burlesque, books, comics, social media, films, music, and everything in between. You can find out more at bookwomenpodcast.ca. This episode of Makeshift Stories is brought to you by ATB. Today, I want to tell you about ATB's new podcast, The Future Of. Join Todd Hirsch, ATB's Vice President and Chief Economist, as he connects with special guests who offer unique and useful perspectives about the future. Explore how our economy and communities can not only brace for change, but embrace the opportunity it creates. From the future of women in business to the changing nature of work itself, The Future Of helps us understand what's coming and what we need to do today to get the tomorrow we want. Featuring 2 episodes a month, plus bonus episodes, The Future Of includes interviews with top community and business leaders from Alberta and around the world. Subscribe to The Future Of in the Apple Store, Google Play, Spotify, and everywhere podcasts are found. And connect to ask your questions about the future by emailing thefutureof@atb.com.
Makeshift Stories is released twice a month around the 1st and the 15th. This month's story was written by Alan V. Hare and read and recorded by Mitchell Tu. Audio editing and post-production by Matthew Erdman. Opening and closing themes were composed and recorded by Matthew Erdman. If you'd like to connect with us, please send an email to makeshiftstories@gmail.com or visit our website at makeshiftstories.com. Links to both are in the show notes. You can help us out by getting your friends to subscribe wherever they listen to audio. Makeshift Stories is released under a Creative Commons non-commercial attribution, no derivative license, which means you are free to share our stories. Just remember to credit us and don't alter anything.